We hope it's not, it doesn't come crashing on us. That's true, Ray. So, there you go, found it. Okay, so how I kind of put this for us to see is today we're going to see Torah and Tanach, and then we're going to do Second Temple, Middle Ages, Enlightenment, the Dreyfus Affair, Zionism, Jews in America, World War One and Two, and then Israel. That's the plan. I put a 10th encounter there just in case we end up having more to talk about, or some class goes farther down. So the first thing I want us to see is that, right, a few basic points I want everyone to have in mind is that, right, we are going to be talking about before Common Era, BCE, and CE, Common Era, because that is a less Christocentric than before Christ and Anno Domini, BC and AD. Right now, history implies that what you're going to be teaching has confirmation by external factors, such as archaeology. So, and this is different, right? This is conservative Judaism, really. That is how conservative Judaism begins, um, in the sense that we have the scientific study of Judaism, right? And that is different than the traditional understanding of Judaism, because the traditional understanding of Jewish history uses only internal sources, and with that we lose, in my opinion, like the background of where is Judaism happening, right? Traditional Judaism doesn't see Judaism as a historical thing that changes with time, and conservative Judaism and what is called the Wissenschaft des Judentus, which is this scientific study, assumes that we have to embrace the fact that the Judaism that we practice today is not the same thing that was practiced 250 years ago. And 250 years ago was not the Judaism of when the temple was around, and that was not the Judaism when the when Moses received the Torah. Right? That is the basic idea of this course. Okay, so the next thing I want us to see is that, just to make sure we are again all on the same page, when we talk Torah, for instance, right? If you're going to look at the time span of Torah, we are talking about 250 years, give or take a few here and there, 2,700 years, give or take a few there or here, right? I also want us to know that when in Genesis, there are people who like to talk, oh, the creation of Adam and Eve is year one. I just want you to remember that already in the Middle Ages, you had rabbis like Yitzhak of Akko that were talking about, no, this is 15 billion years. How he gets there, it's not our point, but what I want you to understand is that already we have in the Middle Ages people thinking cannot be days, right? Cannot, so just keep that in mind. So we have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Right? Deuteronomy is 1 day only, right? Numbers is 42. Leviticus is 9 days. Exodus, right? The book that talks the coming out of Egypt is 430 days. And Genesis is 2,300 days. And that's an important piece for us to understand, right? When we're talking history, we're talking really a very long process for our class of today alone, right? Because after Torah comes Nach. Nach is together with the Torah, right? They form those two groups together form the Tanach, and Tanach is an acronym for Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, which is Torah, prophets, and writings. This is also called the Jewish Bible. That means that if you're comparing our Bible or the Jewish Bible with a Catholic Bible, you're going to find different books because Catholics absorb books that we didn't, right? Also, the Catholic call this the Old Testament, right? And we don't hold by this idea that there is an old and there's a new, right? But our Tanakh is not different from the Protestant Bible, what they call the Old Testament. And finally, right, if you're going to look at just the Nach part of it, so the prophets and the writings, you're going to arrive to 30 discrete books. And all those books, because they interlap with one another, we're talking only 900 years, which in terms of humans, it's a lot, right? But as we said, right, for Torah, that is really not that much. Okay, so here is just an overview of what Tanakh means, right? You have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy as Torah. You have the book of Joshua, the book of Judges, the book of Samuel that is separated just in 1 and 2 simply because it's a very long book, right? And before we had books like we have today with a cover and another cover and so on, they were in rows. And you simply could not have a row that was just too big. So they just chopped the book in two, right? So you have Samuel 1 and 2, Kings 1 and 2, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel is the beginning of, and plus 12 minor prophets. They are just short. They're called minor not because they're unimportant, they're just short. And then finally, the writings are Psalms, Proverbs, Job, Song of Songs, Ruth, Lamentations, Ecclesiastes, what's coming up, right? Purim, Esther, the book of Esther is one of those writings. Daniel, Ezra, and Nehemiah, and finally Chronicles 1 and 2, right? So that is just an overview of what Tanakh is. Now, when we're going to look at a long, right, a line for Tanakh, and this is what I can put this online if you want to have that for your own records, right? What you have here, Abraham and Sarah, right? They would be placed if we could historically ascertain that they existed, right? Following Torah line, you'd have them at minus 2000 BCE. Right now, slavery in Egypt and so on, we're talking 1300 BCE. Receiving the Torah, Shavuot, all that stuff, Shabbat, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, it's all in the same time. Once we arrive in Joshua and Judges, we are already in 1260 before Common Era. And we are going to see that there is here in 1260, then you're going to have some showing of historical records. We'll see that in a second. We're going to do some archaeology today, right? First Kings, you have Saul, David, and Solomon or Shlomo. That is the first temple period, right? When Shlomo dies, then the kingdom splits. And this is really important, right? Because then we're going to see how that affects Jewish history in general. The Assyrians are going to conquer and disperse 10 tribes, and the first temple then is going to be destroyed by the Babylonians. Now, if you heard of the book of Daniel, right, 585 BCE is more or less when he happens. Esther happens somewhere near 530 BCE. We don't have a historical record for Esther. And finally, the Tanakh is going to end when Cyrus of Persia allows Jews to return and to begin the second temple. All right, this is the timeline we're going to be focusing on today. I want you to see that the book of the prophets, as I said, overlaps with Kings and overlaps with Chronicles, and they're all in this from 1260 to 586, right? For the Jewish tradition, there is no a prophet after the destruction of the first temple, right? In what, right, later on, there's simply no more prophets in Israel. Okay, so a little bit of maps, right? And this is particularly important for those who are thinking of the state of Israel right now and whatnot, right? When the first kingdom happens, what you have according to the Torah, this is not yet according to archaeology, because we don't have records or archaeological evidence for King Saul or King Shaul, right? The blue part here is what we have in for Saul, Megiddo and Tanach, and we're going to see those places. They're going to come up. They are unclear if we are talking Jews or not, and we're going to see why. Right? The same thing happens with Bet Shean, right? Nowadays, all those areas are, you have here Joppa, which is Yafo, right? Ashdod, and so on. Now you have a lot more, right? You have Ziklag might be here, right? So that is more where there is no doubt. Okay, so when we talk about the King David, and for King David, we do have some sort of of archaeological evidence. We'll see that in a moment, right? Everything here that you see, notice how much larger, right? The David's um, uh, expansion is, right? He goes up to the top of Assyria there, right? And this is David and Solomon and Shlomo, right? They are they maintain that. However, and this is when Solomon dies. Then notice the shrinking of the areas, in part because Jews are separated in a northern kingdom on the top here in blue and a southern kingdom, right? Notice that the southern kingdom has Jerusalem, and that is the kingdom of Judah, right? And the upper kingdom is going to call Israel, but the capital is going to be this place called Shiloh or Shiloh here, right? So those are the maps. Now let's go into the archaeological evidence. I put a list there just so we can see all of them. The biggest or the earliest evidence of a people called Jews, Israel, right? A people called Israel is the Mernaptah stele, right? And this is you can see how big this stele is. All steles are supposed to be very, very big because they are always celebrating military victories, right? And so what does he do? This is Mernaptah is a pharaoh. We know he existed because of archaeology and history. He reigned between 1213 and 1203 BCE, right? This was discovered in the city of Thebes by Flinders Petrie in 1896. And now this, you can see if you go to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, you can see that stele, right? So now what is the bulk of the inscription? The bulk of the inscription is dealing with his victories over the Libyans, right? But the closing lines of this stele shift to Canaan, right? And so this is the text. The princes are prostrate, saying peace. No one raises his head among the 9 bows. 9 bows are his name for his enemies. Desolation is for Tehmehu. Hati is pacified, that's a people. Plundered is Canaan with every evil. Carried off is Ashkelon. Seized upon is Gezer. Yanoam is made non-existent. Israel is laid waste. Its seed is no more. Cairo has become a widow because of Egypt. All lands are pacified. Everyone who has rested has been bound. So notice that he is saying that Israel is not existent anymore. I killed them all, right? Which I find quite interesting, that the oldest thing talking about Israel is saying how I destroyed these people, right? And here we are, and he is certainly not there, and the Egyptians of his time certainly don't exist anymore. So why is this important? Right? Because it's the first mention of a people called Israel outside of Tanakh. It corroborates the fact that there is a relationship between Israel and Egypt. Now, for those who are asking, it's much harder to make a case for the Exodus itself. If you are interested, I have a link that you can read the entire thing, but the evidence is not as clear as Estelle, right? In part because when those things exist, right, the kings are not going to be writing about a bunch of slaves that fled, right? They're not going to do that because the tales are about those who are victors, right? So that is the first one. Second, important, I said Tanach in that particular map was white. In part, it's because of these things, right? Those are called cultic stands, and what no one really knows exactly what they're for. They believe it's a pedestal of a deity somehow, right? It's hard to say that this is Israelite, simply because we know, right? You're not supposed to have forms and idols and so on, right? But they don't know exactly what this is for. There are people who because the second one here has some incense burnt on top, right? They believe it might have been used for incense, but no one really knows. But if you're thinking that this could be Jewish, it could be Jewish, because I want to remind everyone that the Israelite God has one thing that no other God of those times have, which is that God cannot be depicted, right? So you could imagine people having those things in their homes to call upon God, right? But not right, and God is on top of this because you can't see God. You could, right? So now Asherahs and Baalim, right? If you open any book of the prophets, if you open even Deuteronomy, what do you have? You have this a constant telling the Jews, you cannot have Asherahs, you can stop going after Baal, and so on and so forth. Well, according to biblical archaeologists, maybe up to the 6th century before Common Era, right? There are those shrines of Asherah, or at least figurines of Asherah inside their homes. Strikingly common, right? I just picked a few that you can find in the Israel Museum and in the site. You have a bunch there, right? And all of those that you're seeing here date from the 8th century Common Era. Right now, Baal is a little more complicated because that is a deity that has a much larger area. But here you find also figurines of Baal that were found, right? Archaeologists believe that the bull, because of other things that they have of Baal, the bull symbolizes Baal as well. Those two bulls are from the 12th century, right? As is this figurine of Baal sitting down, right? The other two are from the 8th century, right? This is all, and all of those things were found in Israel. And I think that that's an important piece for us to have in mind, right? That when the prophets later on are going to be angry because people are following those things, right? Here is archaeologists saying, yeah, people were following those things. All right, so, right, and as I said, right, what do you have clear in Tanakh is that the First Kings, you probably remember, for those who know the story of Elijah, that Elijah has this big showdown with the prophets of Baal, right? If you read that particular chapter in First Kings, you also know that Jezebel, Ahab's wife, she had 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah eating in the palace, right? She was keeping them like as part of her court. So it's important for us to understand that those things were actually happening, right? For the common Israelite, it would be very hard to make sense of this prophet saying you cannot do this. Remember, there is only one God, etc., when the powers of the king and the queen are telling you, go ahead, here are the prophets, and etc. Right? But the confrontation of Elijah on Mount Carmel is one of the big stories of Tanakh that everyone should know, right? Precisely because things were happening. All right, next in our list of things to check today, and we're moving forward in time, with this archaeological evidence, right, is the Tel Dan stele. The Tel Dan stele is very important because, first of all, it dates from the 9th century, which is the time of David, more or less, right? The stele was discovered by Gila Cook, a woman who is, of course, an archaeological team. Its pieces were used to construct an ancient stone wall that survived into modern times. The stele here has lots of lines in Hebrew, and you can see here, though, that it's not the Hebrew that you learn to read in Hebrew school. It's not the Hebrew that you're going to find in the Siddur or the Torah, because it's the old Hebrew. It's it was the alphabet being used before the Jews go to Babylonia. The square alphabet that we know today comes back with the Jews when they were in Babylonia, right? But here, what it is uh, uh, in Israel Museum. And what does it say? And that is the part that is important, is that I killed Ahaziah, son of Joram, king of the house of David. And the word house of David is right there, right? This stele was uh, um, uh, right, written by this guy called Hazael, right? And you can read that story in 2 Kings chapter 12. And he really kills those two descendants of King David, right? Now, he made a stele to commemorate that. That stele is eventually broken and brought down and used as a pieces to make a wall. And that is how it survives, actually, right? If it was just there, it would probably not survive, right? So I put here a picture for you to see if you know anything about Israel, right? Mount Hermon is here, and Tel Dan is below Mount Hermon. That's where you can find, right? And now, up to this discovery, archaeologists and historians had this minimalist approach, meaning they didn't really believe that David was actually a real person, right? Here is an example of this archaeologist called Davies in Search of Ancient Israel. He published that in 1992, and when he publishes that, a few months later, this stele comes up, right? So his book is worth nothing today, but here is what he wrote. Whoever is living in the Palestinian highlands around 1000 BC, so 9th century, they do not think, look, or act like the people in the biblical writers have put there. They are literary creations. So this is something I want you to notice, how archaeology also has to review and re-understand what people think, right? So now another thing, very, very important, because we read about those in the Torah, are those altars, right? They're called bamot. Well, those two altars here are found in this Tel Be'er Sheva. So if you go to Israel today, it's 2 miles away from Be'er Sheva itself, the town, right? This one in the open that you see here with the sky. This was found. This is a picture of how they found it after they finally excavated the whole thing. And I wish they had a person there so you could see. It's a very big altar, right? This one is, they believe, was made for animal sacrifices, right? The height is 63 inches, so it's a pretty tall thing. It's big, right? And this and the other one are evidence of the Bamot against which some kings make reforms and try to clear the Bamot out. Right, this other Bama here in the with the black is much smaller. Was found by Igael Adin in 1977, and how he found it is because he was excavating this Tel Beersheva, and he looks at a wall, and inside the wall he can see those pieces of this altar. So the altar was destroyed, was separated, and used to make that wall. Right, and this is again evidence this time of the destruction of such a bama, right? So those altars. The problem with those altars is that you cannot control really whose sacrifices and to which deity those are being given, right? And that is part of the problem of the Bamot for what you could call traditional religion back then. All right, so right, why is this? Oh, here you have a picture of Tel Dan itself, right? What you can see here on the side is how the place looks today. You can go there and visit, right? So an important piece for us to know is that as the Tanakh is moving forward, right, any king is really judged by his attitude towards the Bamot, right? So if the king tries to destroy those Bamot, the narrator of the book, First and Second Judges, thinks that they're great. If they are alone, he's pretty mediocre. But if he worships them or other deities, then they are evil, right? And so if you read the First and Second Kings, you can definitely sense there's this judgment. This is an evil king. Those are the evil things he did. Nowadays, there are people who believe that the prophet Jeremiah, whoever he was the writer of First and Second Kings, precisely because everything is very black and white, just like the rest of the book of Jeremiah. Right now, very important that throughout Tanakh, there is this constant sliding of Israelites from worshiping God, right? Yud Hey Vav and Hey, to worshiping local deities. That's a very big problem. Happens all the time, right? The Jews at best go back to worshiping God for 30, 40 years, and then they slide again. The book of Judges has that as well. Taking away the Bamot, destroying the Bamot, is a way of clearing out this syncretism, right? I can worship both God and the Asher, right? And things like that. Okay? So far, so good? Am I going too fast?
No.
Okay.
No, it's great.
All right. So the next thing, very interesting, very important, are two bullae. Now, bullae is the seal, right? They would have something like a ring, going back to Esther, right? They have a ring, and that ring is put on top of clay, either on jars or on letters or on bags made of cloth, and that is a seal. And those seals are for high-ranking individuals. Now, these two, Isaiah Bulla and the Hezekiah Bulla, are very important. Isaiah is the prophet Isaiah. right? The big prophet, 66 chapters. He's the biggest of all prophets, simply because he writes a lot, right? And Hezekiah is one of the kings he prophesies to, right? And what is quite interesting is that Hezekiah in the Tanakh has a miracle, right? He's healed by Isaiah. Now, the woman called Elat Mazar is the one who is excavating, and I'll show to you the picture where exactly she is, near Jerusalem. And this is what they find as a wall of a bakery, right? And that had operated until the destruction of the temple in 586, right? The first temple, right? Both are found in 2009. Now, that area in the Tanakh is called Ophel, right? And that is where Isaiah appears as well. And King Hezekiah and Isaiah are mentioned together in 16 different Bible verses. So what you have on the top here is the Isaiah, the king, Bula, and here you have on the bottom there, the broken one is Isaiah. Here is, if you know Jerusalem, right, here is where they found this, in this red circle here, right? You have what we know as the waiting wall this side here, and they found this, right? So if you go to Jerusalem today, you can visit, provided you have permission, so on those archaeological sites. Now, what do they say? Right? This is Isaiah, the bull, right? So what you have is that you have a thumbprint on the side here. I don't know if you can see it, and the clay says belonging to Isaiah, and then you have Nun, Vet, and Yud. Right? If you know Hebrew, you know that there is an aleph that is missing, because Navi in Hebrew has an aleph, right? And they cannot really say this could be any other word, simply because of the size of what we'd expect the ring to be, right? On the top here, you have a motif that is very common, which is the motif of a grazing doe, right? And doe as the one who follows God is a very common motif in Israelite imagery. Right now, the belonging to Isaiah is a very fascinating one, right? In part because what he has on the center here is a scarab beetle with the wings, right? And this is a deeply Egyptian symbol of a god called Hefri, right? Now, the interesting thing is that Isaiah is warning against Egyptian influence creeping up into Judah before the Assyrian invasion, right? And Elat Mazar, based on this design, affirms that this seal can be attributed for the time when just after Assyria's invasion, Hezekiah's healing from Isaiah, right? Now, the sun with those wings, she says, it implies protection. And if you know anything Egyptian, you know to see here the right, the symbol of life, the Egyptian symbol of life. You have tons of those lamelech impressions, right? Of those, like, this is of the king, this is of the king, and that is what it says here. To the king, Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah. This is what you have here in the bull, and you write those are a dime a dozen. They found many of those, but Isaiah is not a dime a dozen, right? So they corroborate again, right, that there was Hezekiah as a king, there was Isaiah as a prophet. And interestingly enough, one of the gifts that Isaiah sends, according to both Isaiah 38:21 and 2 Kings 27, is a fig cake from a bakery. and those two things were found near this bakery, right? So all those things kind of point to a historical reality of what the Tanakh says. Now, this one made everyone very excited when they showed up. It is parts of a wall, right? Those are the Ir Allah inscriptions. And now we'll notice we're walking forward in time. We're in 800 BCE, right? The Ir Allah is a city in Jordan, right? About 5 miles east of the Jordan River, right? This was discovered in 1967 by researchers from the Netherlands, from the University of Leiden, right? They found 119 pieces of inked plaster, right? Part of a wall that had fell by an earthquake, plus 11 clay tablets around 1100 BCE in a unknown script. They simply don't know what language that was. And what is an important piece for us in terms of Judaism is that those inscriptions talk about this vision of Baalam ben Beor, right? That we call in Hebrew the prophet Bilam, right? And the prophet Bilam is mentioned in Numbers 22 to 24. And so you find that, and right, when this appeared, people were very excited simply because that is an archaeological evidence of this prophet that is mentioned in the Torah, right? Even though it's not so clear if right, how he could be cursing the Israelites. He is the one who says Matovo Haleha Yaakov, right? That's from his story we get this. This is a picture of where they found, right? So you can see here there is the wall, and here is where this prophecy that he wrote was found, and here you have where the Ir Allah actually is. Here is Jordan, right? And here is the West Bank, and the Ir Allah is right there at the border. Now, what does it say? It talks a lot about these misfortunes of Balaam, the son of Beor. He's a divine seer, just like the Torah calls him a seer, right? Someone who sees, right? And so the story is that the gods came to him at night, and he beheld and noticed the names, right? He beheld a vision in accordance with El's utterance. That's kind of right. And they said to Balaam, else, right, son of Beor, so it will be done with nothing surviving. No one has seen the like of what we've heard. Balaam rose in the morrow. He summoned up the heads of the assembly to him, and for 2 days he fasted and wept bitterly. Then his intimate friends entered in his presence, and they asked to Balaam, son of Beor, why do you fast? Why do you weep? Then notice what he says. Be seated, and I'm going to relate to you what the Shaddai gods have planned. Go and see the acts of God, of El. Right? So notice that Balaam, is using words that we find used to talk about God in the Tanakh, in Torah. Right? The name Shaddai El Shaddai is one of the names that we have. Right? And El, of course, is just a regular name for God in the Torah. But notice that, right, those names are being used, right? So why is it important? He's the earliest prophet to be dug up. Not a tomb, not a skeleton, but a text, right? Showing to you that this idea of being connected to texts is very, very important, right? And the text also represents the first prophecy of any scope from the ancient West Semitic world to be found outside the Bible. Very important, right? This is the first extra Bible example of a prophet. And what is he doing? He is proclaiming doom to his own people. right? He's proclaiming doom to his own people, and this is common. Prophets do that frequently. Now, that was found in the rubble of this building destroyed in an earthquake, and according to the excavators dating, the disaster was probably the severe earthquake that went through the entire area during King Uzziah's time, 760 BCE, right? The lower part of the text shows signs of wear, indicating that it had been in the wall for some time before that earthquake. All right, next one, super important. This is one of my favorite, by far, discoveries in terms of archaeology, which is those the Ketef Hinnom scrolls, right? They were found in 1979. Oops, sorry guys, back, back. Found in 1979 during this excavation, right? And they couldn't open them. They knew that they were scrolls because they were silver, very thin in a paper, and they were used as amulets around someone's neck, right? They found this, of course, in a burial site, right? And one is 1 inch and 0.4, and the other one is and this was rolled. When they open, is 3.8 inches in height and 1 inch in width. The other one was rolled half an inch and 0.2, and when it was open, it's 1.5 inches and 0.4 inches. What you have is that you have text, right? It's an amulet. Amulets in general bring text. What are the texts that those amulets bring, right? Notice here, you have a covenant, and the idea of covenant. God, Yud Hey Vav, Hey, all right, but you can see it's broken here, right? The great who keeps the covenant with graciousness towards those who love him and those who keep his commandments should sound similar to Deuteronomy, right? Because those are words that you find, right? What do you have here? God is being called Tzur, right? Tzur is a very common name for God in the Torah, right? May Yud Hey Vav Hey bless you and keep you. You should ring all sorts of bells. May Yud Hey Vav Hey, may his face shine. You should ring all sorts of bells. This is the blessing of the Kohanim found in the Torah, right? And here, right, what do you have? You have that those scrolls are found, and they are showing uh, the text already in some sort of formation. Yud Hey Vav Hey being called the warrior. We have that in the Song at the Sea, right? God being called the rebuker of evil. Also, we have that in the Tanach, right? May God make his face shine upon you and grant you peace. Is the end of what we call the Cohen blessing, right? There is they believe this was for a specific person, and I have the name up here, right? So those things are very, very important because they talk about texts that were already there, right? Numbers, Deuteronomy, Nehemiah, and Daniel. Here is where they were found. Here, people, right? The bodies would stay here until the flesh decayed, and then they would be put in ossuaries. Why is this important? Because people had this idea that Tanakh, Torah, all that only exists in written form after the destruction of the first temple, that people come back from Babylonia writing those things. But clearly you have here the text already in formation way before this is happening in 700 before Common Era. The next thing I wanted us to see, and whenever I do that, are the Lachish reliefs. There are podcasts about this, right? So you can learn more about them. Lachish is a city in Israel, right, close to Jerusalem. Right, the reliefs were discovered in 1845-47 during excavations by a British guy called Austin Henry Layard. Right, they were carved between 700 and 681 BCE. They were a decoration in a palace of Sennacherib in Nineveh. Right, so Nineveh should ring a bell with Jonah as well for Yom Kippur. Right, the full original panel is immense. You can see here just a picture of the panel in display at the British Museum. Now, what is happening? Right, as I said, this is already when Israel splits the two kingdoms, right? The kingdom of Israel is fine for the moment, right? But the Jerusalem and Lachish are right here, right? Lachish is the what we're talking about. What does it say? Sennacherib, the mighty king, the king of the country of Assyria, sits on the throne of judgment at the entrance of the city of Lachish. I gave permission for its slaughter. I'm going to tell you this. I would never have those things in my wall, but hey, Sennacherib thought it was a great thing. We're going to see it's a pretty graphic thing to have in the walls of your palace. Right? So what I just wanted us to see as a background is how big the kingdom of Assyria ends up being. So obviously, when they want to conquer this little piece of land here, it's very easy for them, right? A part of the history of Israel, of this place here, is that it is in the middle of two big powers. You have Egypt on one side, and you have Babylonia and Assyria on the other. Whenever those guys are fighting, right, they have to pass through the area that today is called the state of Israel, in the area of Canaan, in the area of Israel, right? So this is an area that is always going to suffer. Now, here we have the first depictions, archaeological depictions of Jews being exiled from Lachish, right? How do we know they are Jewish women? Because they're covering, oh God, because they are covering their heads. You can see it here, right? And how do we know it's Jewish men? Because they are also covering their shoulders, right? They're not just in right, loincloth or something. They have more clothing, right? What you have here is a scene of the battle, and I want you to see here down, right? A woman with a bag in her back, and she is running away from the battle. Right? The Assyrians are attacking with battering rams, and you have the few defenders on top here, right? But they are completely killed by the Assyrians. Now, that's why I said I would never have those things in my walls. But hey, Sennacherib had his own preferences, right? He likes torture, right? He has all those depictions of actual torture, both here of Jews, of course, right? They are supposed to be the leaders of the town, and Jews that are impaled as they're being killed as well, right? And so that is war has never been pleasant. And if you look closer to the reliefs of Lachish, you understand that, right? The Assyrians were supposed to be a ruthless people as well. So why is it important? In part, it is important because it proves to us that 2 Kings 18, in which Sennacherib gets Lachish but not Jerusalem, according to 2 Kings 18, it's true, right? Tel Lachish nowadays is the most important site of the Bronze and Iron Ages in present-day Israel. They do lots of excavations there, right? During that age, during the Iron Age, Lachish was the most important city in Judah after Jerusalem. So the Assyrian campaigns under Sennacherib put a temporary end to the city. They destroyed the city completely. The Assyrian conquest was followed by a second decisive blow around 586 BC, when the Babylonian army under the king Nebuchadnezzar devastated Judah, right? Because of course the Babylonians are going to conquer the Assyrians, and are going to conquer everything else that the Assyrians couldn't conquer, right? And the destruction happens then after that relief. Now we're coming to an end with what is called the Jerusalem Chronicles or Babylonian Chronicles, because what you have here is Nebuchadnezzar's military campaigns and the siege of Jerusalem, right? The problem with that particular tablet is that, someone found it and decided to sell pieces of it. Until they had all the pieces together and could plaster it together, it took some time. But it is found in nowadays in the British Museum. Right, so if you look here, remember that we had the Assyria around here, and this is the Babylonian Empire after it eats up Assyria. So you realize, right, that Israel and Jerusalem is right here, but whenever people are fighting, that's the area they're going to end up trying to conquer, right? So what does it say specifically? It doesn't talk about Jerusalem itself, but talks about a city of Yahud, which is interpreted by the scholars to be the city of Judah, right? So what does it say? In the 7th year of Nebuchadnezzar, in the month of Kislev, I want you to notice that the name of the month is the same name that we have, because our months name of our months in the Jewish tradition comes from Babylonia. The king of Babylon assembled his army, and after he invaded the land of Hatti, which are Turkey and Syria, he laid siege onto the city of Judah on the 2nd day of the month of Adar, 16th of March. He conquered the city and took the king Jeconiah or Yehoniah prisoner. He installs in his place a second king called Zedekiah, and Zedekiah pays tribute to Babylonia. Now, why is this important? Because it confirms, right, a very significant event, which is the destruction of the temple. And it also gives you the exact date when the city fell, which is March 16, 597 BCE. So, the last thing we're going to see today is the Cyrus cylinder. Cyrus is the next big guy, because of course, that story, the big kingdoms keep at war and keep being conquered, right? Now Persia shows up and conquers Babylonia, and because it conquers Babylonia, then Cyrus has this cylinder written in this cuneiform piece. There are pieces missing, but people know more or less what it says. It's housed again in the British Museum, right? The cylinder was discovered by this Assyro-British archaeologist Hormuzd Rassam in March of 1879. After this very lengthy program of excavations in Mesopotamia that the British Museum was financing, right? When was it created? Has the last date as 530 BCE, right? And it's celebrating this conquest of Babylonia. Now Cyrus has a very different way of dealing with the peoples he conquers, and that is what is very important for us. Like this is, you can see the map of the Persian Empire, right? I want you to notice that all the empires we've seen, like Persia, Babylonia and Assyria and Babylonia, now Persia, they are always growing in size, right? Because that is exactly what happens, right? Next class, we'll talk about Alexander the Great, right? And Alexander the Great conquers everything. Where is he from? From Macedonia, staying on the side here. And he's going to conquer the entire piece as well, right? So, uh, when Cyrus has this cylinder, I just picked a few pieces of the text that are important for us, right? What do you have here? You have that I am Cyrus, king of the universe, right? The guy had no problem with self-esteem. King of the universe, the great king, the powerful king, king of Babylonia, king of Sumer and Akkad, king of the four quarters of the world. And then he gives his entire descendant. He says then that he is beloved by a deity called Marduk, which is the deities of the Persians, right? And his vast troops march peaceably in Babylon. They just take the city, and the people are happy to have them, right? And then this is what is important. What does he think, right? The Babylonians are doing wrong, right? He really believes that the Babylonians are wrong in destroying sanctuaries of other deities. He really believes that. It's quite an interesting thing. What does he do? He returns the people back to their sanctuaries to make the gods happy, to make Marduk happy, right? That um, happens to be very good for the Jews in the sense of the Tanakh, because what is the Tanakh going to say? Cyrus is the one who orders the Jews that were exiled to Babylonia to come back to the land of Israel and rebuild the temple. And that is exactly how the Tanakh ends, with that story. And it's important for us to see that all that has happened in this moment. Now, Ezra, Chronicles, they all talk about Cyrus. Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, lauds Cyrus as a anointed, as a Mashiach, right? You can read that in Isaiah 45, right? Now, in the biblical context, Cyrus the Great is viewed as chosen by God for the distinct purpose of salvation. This differs, of course, from what the cylinder says, which is Marduk, the Babylonian god that is guiding Cyrus. But for the Tanakh, that doesn't change. Last thing I want us to have in mind for next class, right? What do you know that unite Jews, all the Jews, by 500 BC? What do we know? Right? You know that Jews have a common patriarchs and matriarchs. The Exodus from Egypt is a foundational story that all the Jews by 500 BC have in their heads. Right? Practices such as Shabbat and Kashrut are there. Somehow, not as how we do it today, but somehow some practices are already there. We nowadays, when they excavate places in Israel, they can tell if the city was in the Iron Age Jewish or not by the lack of pork bones, right? Pig bones. If you don't find pig bones, then you know that was a Jewish city. So we know that kashrut is a thing in already in the Iron Age period, right? So by 500, right? This is obvious. This is something taken for granted among Jews. Right now, that God is unique and one, that God is incorporeal, is something that Jews by 500, by the end of Tanakh, have very clear in their heads. Right? That God is active in history. God takes care of the Jews, takes care of the peoples around that also. God is available both through sacrifices and prayer, right? Why they have to have that? Because they were exiled in Babylonia for 70 years. They didn't have the temple, but here they are coming back. And very important, three groups very clear, Kohen, Levi, and Israel inside the people. Those are right. All those things that we have, we're going to see that unite the Jews. Next time, what we're going to be seeing is what is called the Second Temple period, when those are going to be basically the only things that unite the Jews, because we're going to see the Jews begin splintering in all sorts of directions. I want you to notice, we didn't spoke of Hanukkah because Hanukkah is not a story of the Tanach. Hanukkah is going to happen during the Second Temple period. We'll talk about Hanukkah next class. All right? So I hope this was a good overview. Maybe a lot if you want the text or the pictures to review what we've seen. I can put them online and give you guys the um, um, the link. I would love for everyone to give me their email, and I'm going to open the chat so that you guys can do that. And if you could also, like now, we have a few minutes. If you want to ask something or say something, this is your moment. But please write on the chat your email. You can, if you don't want to write to everyone, just send a private message to me. It's going to get there. All right.
Says chat is disabled.
Chat is disabled. Wait a second, participants. What's going on here? Host tools maybe. Oh, there you go. There you go. Try it again. Good work,
Okay.
Phil. So if you guys could put your emails there, that would be great. Because if I have to cancel a class or something, you guys will know as well.
Is it, since these have been recorded, are the recordings going to be available to us also?
I hope so. Let me tell you, I
Okay.
haven't had a lot of luck with Zoom recordings, but I hope so.
All right, because I'm going to have to miss next week, but
Yeah, that is the idea.
the text
Right?
you said will be available online.
Yes, I'm going to, now that I have all your guys' emails, I will do an email with a link on Google Docs or Google somethings, so you guys can download that for your own. Okay.
Thank you. This was great.
Yes, it's very interesting, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Take care, Sonia. Glad to see you, everyone. Thank you.
Everyone
Bye,
be well.
Sonia.
Guys, be well.
Hello.
Bye.
Goodbye, goodbye.
Everyone be
Bye.
well.
Bye. Bye, Sonia.
So I told